Thank you for coming back to my channel to hear another webinar. This one is the effects of smartphones and mobile devices on teen mental health. So, how widespread is the use of smartphones and mobile devices? Clearly, we know things are much different than they were when about 10 years ago, even for teens 10 years ago versus teens now. It's estimated that 95% of youth between the ages of 13 and 17 use smartphones. And almost half of those teens report using them near constantly. I'm going to use the words smartphones and mobile device interchangeably. They kind of, for the purpose of this presentation, mean the same thing. Currently, adolescents spend less time in person with peers compared to previous generations, and technology influences their identity and socialization in numerous ways. In a survey recently, 24% of respondents reported a mostly negative effect of social media on their lives, whereas 31% said it was mostly positive, and half said that the effect had been neither positive nor negative. So it was almost pretty equally distributed. However, more than half of teenagers have reported feeling lonely, anxious, or upset in the absence of their phone, which is pretty alarming because a phone is an item and they have a lot of feelings of, mental health, wellness related to an item, which is a little scary. So studies have shown, other studies, there's been a lot of them. They all kind of find different things, but one of the studies I found to be more interesting had showed that at least half of teens feel addicted to their mobile devices. Over half of the parents surveyed believe that their kids are addicted to their devices. Almost 3/4 of teens and half of parents feel the need to immediately respond to texts, messages, and other notifications. Almost 70% of parents and almost 80% of teens check their devices at least hourly. Half of teens said they use the internet almost constantly. Almost half said they go online several times a day. And about half of teenage girls and 39% of boys are near constant online users. So this isn't just limited to teens, it's adults too. And part of that is some role modeling for sure. So there's an ongoing debate about whether social media and digital devices are negatively impacting mental health or not. Some studies say yes, some say no. What we do know is that adolescents tend to be heavy users of those devices and especially of social media, and that the rates of teenage depression really began to rise around 2012 when adolescent use of social media became much more common. Some evidence indicates that frequent users of social media have higher rates of depression and anxiety than light users. So it's hard to say which causes which, but it's an interesting correlation. Girls in particular seem to be the most vulnerable to this effect. This sudden increase in rates of depression and anxiety around 2012 that I mentioned before, it was really seen in particular in girls. And a lot of researchers believe this may be because girls tend to use social media much more versus boys who tend to spend more of their time gaming. For girls, social life and status tends to revolve around, inclusion and exclusion and intimacy and relationships, making them more vulnerable to both the fear of missing out and the relational aggression that social media facilitates. This isn't like a new phenomenon. This has always been the case with girls, that they've had more relational aggression and more social status around inclusion and exclusion. Social media and mobile devices just exaggerate that normal developmental phase. Overuse of the smartphones and mobile devices, it really can impact mental and physical health. Being overly connected can cause some issues such as distraction, narcissism, expectation of instant gratification, and even depression. I hear a lot of reports of this from adults saying that kids are very impatient. They want everything to happen right away. We're in a generation where we can get things at the click of a button, click on Amazon, and it's here in a day or two. Besides affecting mental health, overuse of technology can also have negative repercussions on physical health. Staring at a tiny screen for a long time can cause vision problems. Earbuds that are too loud can cause hearing loss and neck strain. If you look around and see all the heads bent over the phones, this has got to take a toll on our physical health. Studies have found that more technology use is linked to later increases in attention, behavior, and self-regulation problems, primarily in adolescents who are already at risk for these problems and other mental health issues. But again, think about what would happen to these kids if they didn't have the phone or this mobile device impacting them. They would have a better outcome potentially. Mobile devices can affect everybody, even those who don't use mobile devices. That's kind of one of the things that's different about this kind of an issue, is that whether you do or you don't, you're affected. Many researchers think about social media as if it were sugar, safe in small amounts. But unlike sugar, social media, it affects everybody. It has transformed the nature of peer relationships, family relationships, and daily activities. For example, if you have a class of 11-year-olds and most of them are on Instagram, the kids who aren't on Instagram can find themselves feeling isolated, and there's nothing they can do about it, if especially if their parents aren't willing to let them go on Instagram. Which isn't to say that the parents should let them go on Instagram to avoid feeling left out, but it brings up an issue where there wasn't one before. And then also parents who overuse their smartphones aren't giving kids the time and attention they need. So if the parents are addicted to their smartphones and aren't giving the kids what they need, the kids haven't done anything, but they're feeling the effects of those smartphones nonetheless. So what can we do? Given that teens use their phones for a lot of different reasons, personal and academic, it helps to focus less on counting the minutes of how they use the use of their device, not so much how much they're using it, but how they're using it. Parents hear a lot about the importance of teaching balance, but understanding and evaluating a healthy balance is understanding how they use their phones and for what purpose. YouTube, for example, can be both recreational and academic. Are they using YouTube to watch people do pranks all day long, or are they using YouTube to learn how to change the oil in their car? It's not only YouTube that's the problem, it's the content that you need to look at. It's really important to be involved. Make it a rule that you know your child's passcode to their phone and let them know that you're going to check it. So some questions parents need to ask themselves, really and honestly, if they're trying to decide if smartphone use is a problem for their teen, are the following. Does your teen become angry, irritable, or anxious, or even violent when their phone is taken away? Do they skip or avoid social events to be able to use the smartphone instead? You know, is your kid upstairs in a room alone on their smartphone for hours when they're at a family party and they're avoiding interacting with their relatives in favor of being on Instagram? That's a problem. Personal care, hygiene, friendships, family relationships, schoolwork, are all those things affected by smartphone use? Are they so busy on the phone they don't have time to shower or do their schoolwork or talk to their grandmother when she comes over to visit? Does smartphone use interfere with sleep? A lot of kids have their phone in their room and they're up at all hours of the night. When they hear that ping, they have to answer it. They're looking at blue light screens all evening and they're not able to fall asleep. Changes in eating habits that can't otherwise be explained, and changes in mood. If you answered yes to any of these, it could be a problem and it's time to get some help. You can reach out to your doctor, your school counselor, or a therapist. This is an issue that therapists know how to deal with. It's a prominent issue among teens today. Some other symptoms of a problematic smartphone use pattern might be using the phone when it's a dangerous situation or prohibited. For example, texting while driving. Using it to the point that it causes conflicts with the family, withdrawing from family events, they would rather use their phone. Negative effects on school, impulsive, frequent, constant checking of the phone, even in short bursts. They just have this strong need to flick it on and check it every couple minutes. They can't seem to stop. Insomnia or sleep disturbances, urgency or need to be connected, needing to use the phone in order to improve their mood, not being able to improve their mood in any other way, needing to respond immediately to a message. If they hear the phone ping across the room and they can't get to it, are they starting to get anxious and upset and nervous? Increased feelings of anxiety and irritability if their phone's not accessible. Are they able to set their phone down and leave it at home for the day? Or does that create a lot of anxiety and irritability? It's important you help your teen unplug. With healthy limits in place and lots of conversations, families can come up with digital diets that work for the whole family. It's important to empower teens to take control of their own use and to maintain a healthy balance. This is a skill that they're learning. This isn't a one-time conversation. It's just an ongoing thing that the whole family needs to work on and get behind. You want to educate your teen, talk openly about the benefits and pitfalls of screen time. Lecturing doesn't work. We know this, but asking your teen about the pros and cons can spark some conversations. Um, ask them what they like about it. Ask them what they like about what they're doing online. What does it get them? What is their favorite things? But then also combat that with talking about how does too much screen time affect us physically, emotionally, academically, and socially? What can we gain from using our smartphones, but in a responsible way? Be open to their point of view. It's not just all negative. They see a lot of positives, and it's important to acknowledge that. Make a plan. Talk about setting healthy limits and boundaries for the whole family and what checks and balances you can use, like not allowing phones on the table during dinner. And remember, teens aren't the only ones prone to overuse. It's every age, every generation. What happens if parents are pushing the family screen time limits? Talk to your kids about ways that they can keep you in check and give them some empowerment and some input around this. Monitor use as a family. Teens look for workarounds when they feel like they're being watched. Make monitoring a family goal so that everybody owns up to their usage and behavior online. There are several apps available now that you can use to monitor your use. The iPhone has a screen time setting. You can use it to track and set healthy limits for specific apps, for social media apps and that sort of thing. And you can shut down apps at certain times. Talk with your teens about healthy and realistic limits. Have them help show you how to set those limits and how to use those apps. Let them teach you. Phones, tablets, laptops, all those things should be removed from the bedroom at night to curb sleep disturbance and insomnia. That's kind of one that there isn't a lot of leniency on. It's just a good recommendation. And you want to create a plan to check devices in at a certain time in the evening and out in the morning. Maybe you have a charging dock station in your room and everybody turns their phones and mobile devices in at a certain time. And you want to establish screen-free zones too. Meals, family outings, social gatherings. These are all times when people checking their phones frequently, it really affects the relationships negatively. Set some boundaries for screen use in these settings and stick to them. And that means the parents too. So what if you can't get your teen to stop using their phone? You want to help them to practice some coping strategies like exercise, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. You can look a lot of these up online. There's tons of different ideas. And use those to help them cope with curbing their urges. Make sure you're following the rules around screen time and doing screen-free activities together and model that behavior for them. Stick with it. It's not going to happen overnight. This didn't become a problem overnight. It's not going to get better overnight. After a few weeks, people who reduce their use generally report an improvement in their mood and a reduction in loneliness and symptoms of depression. So those are some really good goals and some big things that you want, and you want to get to there, so you have to give it a chance. If you suspect that your teen's addicted or smartphone use is negatively affecting their functioning, get help. Don't wait. Reach out to a therapist or your school counselor or your doctor to get them some individual help. There are some positives about the use of technology and mobile devices. Doctors, researchers are finding new ways to access help, monitor progress, and increase understanding of mental well-being. NAMI, which is the National Association on Mental Illness, just came up with a new teen text line for teens in crisis or who are feeling suicidal, so they can text for help. So we're meeting kids where they're at as far as getting help, which is good. Mobile mental health support can be very simple and very effective. Like I just said, anybody with the ability to send a text can contact a crisis center now. And there are a lot of really good apps out there that teens can use to help them focus on stress management, anxiety reduction, and mindfulness. One that I found is called Mind Shift. It's a free app, and it helps you track your moods and talk, sort of collect some data around your mental health and mental well-being and emotions and coping skills. It helps you gain some insight into your own feelings and thoughts. Remember, if nothing else, connect before you correct. If your teen makes a bad decision online or with their phone use or doesn't comply with the rules, before handing out consequences, ask them about what happened. Let them explain their thinking. Just say to them, "This happened. What was your thought process?" Maybe they weren't thinking. Maybe they were. Maybe they had a reason. Give them a chance to share that before you punish. Help kids find space for face-to-face conversations. Put your phone down during a key conversation time, such as dinner or car rides. Model those manners and behaviors that you want to see around phone use. Empower your teen to monitor their own use. Encourage them to use that time monitoring software or apps that I told you about before. And given that learning to use your own judgment is a big part of growing up, it's important for parents to realize that regulating their own behavior is something kids need to learn for themselves, and you're there to give them the tools and the support along the way. So that's everything I have to say about smartphone addiction at this time. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at eileenworcester@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed this, and stay tuned for more webinars in the future.